Hey everyone, my name is Kirsten VanderJagt, and welcome to the first episode of the Shared Housing Academy, which is for investors and funding partners, and also our social workers and placement partners. And so, real quick, before I introduce JulieAnn, I'm going to share a little bit about Katie's House Foundation, which is a nonprofit 501c3, and we offer single family houses that would otherwise be Airbnbs or long-term rentals or maybe midterm rentals. We take those homes under our foundation, and then we sublet the rooms, either single occupancy or double occupancy, for affordable housing. And so a lot of times we will work with government bodies, maybe the drug court, or talking with veterans court, or sober living. And so there are a lot of different populations, student housing. There's a lot of people, right, who just can't afford a house or even an apartment. And housing is getting so expensive, inflation, and all of these things that people are ending up homeless. And once they're homeless and they're sad, and if they did drugs before, they do drugs after, now we have some mental health issues. And so there's a lot of layers to this. And Katie's House Foundation is seeking to help reduce homelessness. And also, we have the Normalize Money show, which is a show geared towards teenagers ages 15 and 19, and also at-risk adults. And so when they live at one of the houses under our care, then they can take this structured financial literacy class. It's 30 hours with homework. And then that way they can get their credit and their job and a lot of things situated. So that way they can move on to permanent housing, either through a long-term lease or buying their own house if they partner off. And so anyhow, that's a lot about us. We're starting this academy because we want to share with real estate investors how to get involved in the social impact movement. So that way you can take your homes and start helping solve the homelessness crisis that's going on. So, Julie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and your background?
Hi, I'm JulieAnn Ferraro. I'm actually been in law enforcement for 27 years. I recently retired, but I'm still working in that field. I also am a real estate investor, and I do a little bit of everything, but I have been the landlord, and I've been, directly involved with that. And, Kirsten, I know you were touching a little bit about the investors and how they can the social impact, but it's also shared housing is actually profitable as well, if it's done right. So you're actually solving a problem and you're actually making money when you solve the problem too. So, but we're looking here too to share information. We're looking to share those kinds of contacts that we have, that if it's you got this house and you want to fill it, we've got to have those placements. And I'm part of the organization for Katie's House Foundation, and I do help with that placement part of it. I do help with trying to get those houses filled and those beds filled. And we can talk a little bit later about 2 beds in a room is now 2 people paying 1 room rent, and you've got 4 rooms. Now you start doing the math, and it starts to become financially, um, twice as much as what you were getting for if you just leased it to a family, and you're solving the problem. Remember, you're talking about homelessness, you're talking about how much it costs for people, and they can't really afford even a studio apartment in some areas. And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to bring everybody together to make this an easier thing, because just trying to do it by yourself is really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things to touch on based on your introduction, and the money around this conversation in a couple different capacities. And so personally and professionally, I come from 20 years of being a mortgage underwriter, working for, portfolio lending and doing affluent loans in the millions of dollars every single day, and looking at the risk around that and also the money that can be made around that. And when we talk about shared housing, someone who owns the property can make up to 4 times market rents. Now, there are more expenses involved with that, and there's more risk involved with that. Uh, and also picking a population and an area for that house is really important. So this is why we have the academy, because yes, there you can make more than $25 net per door. You can make more than Airbnb. However, having a nonprofit and also managing the risk and the insurance around that is important. And also, I would say this too, for the government bodies that are listening to us, um, I have sent out a few communications with a few mayors this week. And one of the things that comes to mind is, it takes about, let's just call it $25,000 to arbitrage a house, meaning rent a house from one of our investors through our investor alliance. But there are lots of houses that are available to Katie's House Foundation through our investor alliance. Now, putting that $25,000 up front, if you're a donor, part of our funding alliance, or part of our donors, that allows us to actually go and secure that house, and also to put in the beds that are necessary and the appliances that are necessary and some of the other things that really need to be there. So you have the sanitation, like a dishwasher, for example. You need to have a dishwasher so that way people are sanitizing their dishes. You need to have proper exit signs that glow in the dark during a fire. So that way, of course, if there, heaven forbid, something happens, people can actually get out. Not the cheapy ones that look cute, but the actual ones that when a house burns down, the people can get out of the house because they know where the exit is.
So I have a question. So you're talking an actual inspection, maybe as part of the city. You're talking about, if you're talking about partnering with the city. You're talking about trying to get that funding, to get that so that the affordable housing is actually being in place in that community, that those people are investing in their own community. But at the same time, we've got to spend the money to pass those inspections and to get those houses to a standard where it is considered a shelter. We have a little bit more law enforcement side that, I'm not just going to go there as a police officer and say, I can't do anything for you, that you fall under different rules and that you're not necessarily considered a hotel long-term rental. You're more of a temporary shelter, but at the same time, you're allowing them to stay there up until a time when they can get on their feet and get out.
Yeah, our model at Katie's House Foundation. Yes, Julie, absolutely. So our model at Katie's House Foundation, the recommended length of stay is 6 months to 2 years. They can stay for as little as 1 week, or someone can pay for the week, and maybe they only end up staying for 3 or 4 days. Again, this could be a mother, a father, a single individual. They could have children, they could have pets. And so a lot of the things that normal commercial shelters don't allow for, Katie's House Foundation and our single family houses, and even if, let's say, it was a duplex, or we can talk about commercial buildings, but we really want it to be a single family. But what I actually was going to talk about was, the $25,000, and we could even say it's 20, that would actually cover the acquisition, the setup, and then even putting a house manager in there. And then if we have a government contract, maybe with the drug court, for example, where they pay $800 per bed and they send people over from the drug court to live there for, several weeks. Instead of getting a felony, they get clean. Not that we do the detox, but essentially the money starts coming in from the beds from some of these government grants. And the one thing that I just actually wanted to say is that, like, government pension funds, they can make a 10% interest on the $20,000 or $25,000 setup. And so when I was emailing these mayors this week and talking about the money and how we can actually solve the homelessness crisis, let's take San Diego, California, for an example, where housing is really unaffordable for the most people. At Katie's House Foundation, we could actually easily secure a 5-bedroom house and put 10 people in it. And it would cost us about $25,000. And we could get a government pension fund underneath, we have hedge fund, right? So we could go to our friends who manage money. Julie, you and I, of course, are part of this group that manages money, and legally do this where they could make a 10% return on their money. So the mayor could approve us to set up a house for 25 grand. And then that, let's just call it a police pension fund, makes 10% a month every single month until that is paid back. I'm just saying there's a whole economic circle here of helping the community reduce homelessness, provide nice housing. It's a long-term solution. And if we did take funding from not American Express or some other type of lender, but the government wanted to actually invest the money and make a 10% return, we could, of course, look at that as well. And so there's multiple pieces going on here, but we need to start this conversation because it is a win for everyone, as long as we start the conversation and working together. So that's where I'm at with it. Julie, what do you think on that note?
Yeah, I again, I'm all for it, because from my perspective and me being out, on the streets, and the amount of people that just can't make that down payment to get into that apartment, they just can't get their head around getting that job and keeping that job, because they just don't know where they're going to be that night. They just don't sleep well. They can't work because they can't show up, because they don't, and we talked earlier on about, the younger generation, and how, securing that ID and having an ID and just having the ability to have those documents that you go by, and we all as investors now, and capitalists and the entities, the cities and the businesses, we have a bigger responsibility now, and we understand, what we're looking at. And we're looking at higher interest rates. We're looking at higher cost of housing. We're looking at, basically having a very big divide between the wealthy and the poor. And that's where, trying to bridge that gap a little bit more, and lending that hand down and lifting those people up. So I think, when we talk about Investor Alliance, we talk about the Social Worker Alliance, and just having those connections that we can all use to get the job done, and everybody wins out of it. Because if it was money you were looking for, or if it was trying to get that homeless guy so that he wasn't causing 10 police calls a day, that it's a win for everybody. So yeah, I mean, what can investors, and what can some of the people that are listening, what can they do to help us get involved? What do you want to see?
So a couple of things real quick. You had mentioned 10 calls for a police officer on a homeless person. I actually had heard that it's about $85,000 to house one person in jail per year as well. And so, yeah, the cost savings around this is an important conversation as well. How can people get involved? They can go to katieshousefoundation.org, and they can pre-purchase our shared housing class for investors if you are an investor. And so the proceeds from that do go towards Katie's House Foundation. That way we can set up these houses and keep things going. If you can make a donation, you can do that through katieshousefoundation.org as well. And so if you're looking to donate money, please do that. Any amount would help. Certainly, if you have a large endowment, that could drastically make a difference for your city. And then if you are somebody who is responsible for these grants to place people, so you might have a placement specialist as well as a grant specialist who work together for, again, let's just talk about like the drug court or veterans court. And what I would suggest is that you reach out to us through our website and let us know that you want to work something out, because we can easily do this nationwide, but we need the funding and we need the partnerships to be able to do this. And Julie, you mentioned on the rich versus the poor, but I think also we have this conversation about it's really everyone feeling the pinch right now, unless you are very wealthy. And so what that means is that it's not even just homeless people who have been homeless chronically for years. And it's not people that are using drugs, and that are addicted to drugs. Even just losing, right, $300 a month or $500 a month and getting behind on your property taxes. You might have your house completely paid off and have worked your entire life. And then you had a medical, let's say a car accident, and then you were laid up in a hospital, and had to get surgery, and you lost your job during that time frame. And now, if you get a part-time job or whatever the case may be, there's a study that came out in California that said the reason that we're seeing a lot of homelessness is because of that $300 to $500 per month shortage, so deficit in their income, and also inflation, right? So the cost of goods are going up and people are not getting the same raise. And so I know something came out this week by Brooks Landry. He's a real estate agent, and he was saying that you need to make 13% more to get a starter house. And so there's a lot of different layers, but I read an article, a gentleman who's sleeping on someone else's floor and his kids are in a shelter 2 hours away, right? And these are hardworking professionals. And so I just want to touch on that our houses are intended for working professionals as well, and their families. And we need to be helping everybody. And so when we take a shared house, a beautiful 5-bedroom house, let's say, I don't want the neighbors to think, oh my gosh, don't put that in my neighborhood. The truth is, if you go to our website and you read our house rules and our good neighbor policy, you won't even know that that's a shared house, because, I live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and we have 4 children, and, there's 2 of us to a room. And that's normally the standard that's allowed, 2 people to a room in almost every single state, because it used to be that people would have family that lived with them. So anyways, it's not an Airbnb where people are partying, and it's not a commercial shelter. We really want to make a difference. So yes, go to our website, pre-purchase the class. Also for teenagers, pre-purchase our financial literacy class, and have your teenager take that class. Make them do that before they turn 18. So that way they know how to get their own place and they don't end up homeless, or even a friend of yours that might be an adult, right? Julie,
Yeah,
anything before we wrap up?
well, I was just going to say, I think this is a good start, and I think maybe in the next episode we can touch on some of the more specific things about some of those connections that we're trying to make, and get that that going, and about sharing the word, and getting that out, so that we like you said, we can pretty much do this nationwide. Between the investors that have those rentals that they want to rent out, and the nonprofits, and your class is going to show them how to connect all those dots together and do that. And that's, like you said, that's going to fund Katie's house directly too. So I look forward to the next talk we have.
All right, awesome. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it if you can, because there's revenue that comes in from YouTube as well. We've got to get up to 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours watched. So share this with your investor Facebook group, and let's keep the conversation going. Julie, I hope that you have a great week, and I'll talk with you next week.
Yes, you too.